Ready to go live. All right, I went live, so the dog instantly left the room. He was like, "All right, that's my cue. I gotta bounce."
Okay, yeah. I can't be on camera. I can't be on
gotta get up.
recorded audio.
He signed. He signed like one of those like agreements that like I'm not allowed to be photographed or videoed at all.
Yeah.
All right. Hopefully, my cough isn't too bad tonight, but I have my voice back, but I still definitely have a cough going. So
You can use it to drive home points.
exactly.
Like Pearson his sneezes.
Absolutely. That was one of the most underrated gags from that show. Just being like, making a point and then go,
I think the Cubs are going to win it all this year. Yes.
yes. God, maybe it's time for a rewatch of that show.
I did that pretty recently, and it was amazing. I stopped it like halfway through season 4, though.
Yeah,
I just couldn't do the rest.
I understand that. I understand. All right. Well, apologies for taking a little while to get here, but it is time for a new episode of You'll Never Talk Alone. A few weeks off for various reasons, one of which being that I couldn't have recorded last week because I sounded like Satan himself had taken out my vocal cords. I had completely lost my voice. It was so bad that my dogs were honestly scared of me and would leave the room if I started trying to talk to them. But we're back here tonight. I'm your friend Joseph Craven. This is Alex Lovell joining me as well. And it kind of worked out that we weren't able to record until just now because we didn't miss much.
Yeah, only one game.
So the match that we were supposed to preview a couple of weeks ago is finally upon us. We'll talk about that in a little bit here. We'll talk about the ramifications of a season in which the title has been officially locked down already. That's the wrong choice of words, given the climate we've all lived in for the past like 14 months or so. I apologize.
Take it again.
The title is locked up by now. So but we have a victory to talk about. We have the faintest of top 4 chances still out there somewhere. And we've got I don't know, a myriad of things. What's really fascinating about all of this is that we took a couple of weeks off unintentionally. It wasn't like we planned on it. And then we come back a few weeks later, and we're still sitting here like, well, what do we talk about? Because most of the matches have all been kind of the same anyway. Like, we didn't really get a chance to, I think, recap Well, no, I guess we did talk a little bit about the Newcastle match, but it's just, I don't know. It's just a difficult season to talk about. It just has been. And we're nearing the end of it, mercifully. And hopefully can put together a couple of decent performances to round things out here in this highly forgettable 2020 to 2021 season. So, Alex, first and foremost, a victory. Not just a victory, but actually scoring multiple goals.
I don't know what you mean. I don't know what you're talking about. You're going to have to explain this to me.
You're just going to have to take my word for it. It happened, and it was wonderful.
Are you sure we didn't play 2 games?
Actually, I am positive that we have not played 2 games. That is the one thing I am sure about with this whole season, is that in the past couple of weeks, we have not played 2 matches. But a victory. A 2-0 performance against Southampton. A squad that has had their own fair share of ups and or downs this season. Kind of more par for the course for them to have ups and downs in general. But they were for a little while a pretty good team. They of course finished strong, I believe, last season, and then now they're sitting here in 14th place. So just an interesting squad in and of itself. But being able to put 2 goals past them. Finally have a performance that's looked pretty good. What do you take from this match? What do you take from that victory that might translate into these next 4 matches remaining?
Yes,
Yep.
it should be, I believe it's 4.
Yep, it is 4. United, West Brom, Burnley, and Palace.
Yeah, I was impressed by how good Saints looked without Drew Brees. I mean, I think they coped pretty well with losing him, him retiring. They seemed to handle it all right. But no, it was almost the exact same match we've watched 400 times this season,
right.
Except we scored again. Like, we actually took one of our other chances. And granted, it was late in the game, and Alisson needed to be huge, and then was so confident that he decided to give them a free chance just so he could save it again. But I just didn't really know what to do when Thiago scored. One, because I was just so happy for him, because he's just getting a bunch of just ridiculous stick from a bunch of idiots mostly. And then just like we have a 2-goal lead. What is this feeling?
Mm-hmm.
How do we process this? Do we have to let the other team score so that we only win by 1 and then score again later in the game so we draw?
Like, what are the rules here? This is kind of uncharted territory. Like, what are we supposed to do?
Yeah, it was just it was not the best performance, but it was a performance where we did the same things and it just had a slightly different outcome. And if only we had been able to do that a few more times before this match, we wouldn't be needing to sneak in through the window for top 4, like Thiago put it after that match.
What a great quote.
Yeah.
Is that the highlight of the match, though, that quote about Thiago?
That's my highlight of the season. Like, that's better than the 7-0 win over Palace, is him saying the door is closed, but we have to sneak in through the window.
But we have to sneak in through the window. That's a guy who's broken curfew a couple of times.
Yeah.
You can tell. Yeah, it was great for him because, like, we have not... You and I obviously have not partaken in the stick giving. Is that how
we everyone has just been giving him sticks.
Yeah, that's what it is. It's not a metaphor. It's actually a weird thing that's been happening. No, so we have not been partaking in that ourselves. We're fans of him, but I think we can both admit that this has not been a smooth transition for him. It has not been as much of an immediate impact as the hope was. Like, he was a rare transfer for Liverpool in which he was not like a potential player or a guy that we felt like, oh yeah, no, he like fits the system so well, he's going to come in and be a big catalyst. This is an established world-class dynamic player that we expect to be able to contribute immediately. And obviously the injury has a lot to do with that, having to rebound from that. But even when he had like fully rehabbed and was getting significant minutes, there were a lot of times in which it was clear that he had not had the opportunity to get settled, get adjusted. And so it has not been a good season for him. I think it's safe to say that. Now, is that indicative of the future? Is that indicative of his talent level and his fit in the club? No, that's where people take it way too far. That's where it makes no sense. But it has been, a trickier transition than I know he would have liked than we would have liked. It's just kind of been that sort of year, though. That's how the season has been in general. It's been, it's been lots of injuries. It's been everyone just kind of in bad runs of form. I mean, Sadio himself, that quote recently that came out of him saying, "Yeah, this is probably the worst year of my career." That sort of thing going on. It just hasn't been good for anybody. So no, I don't think it's indicative of what he can bring or his fit in the team or any of the stuff that a lot of people give him flack for that is unwarranted.
Oh, now they're giving him flack?
Yeah, exactly.
Sticks and flax.
Yeah, they're saying that he doesn't have enough like fiber and whole grains in his diet, so they're giving a bunch of flax seeds and sticks. So like the people that it's totally unwarranted, and it's unwarranted because like we can see or we know based on his resume that's not who he is. And I think at the very least getting this goal and this match, though, yeah, it was not a dynamic, dominant performance from the whole team. but it was a good one for him. And so it was important to get that and show a little bit more of like, okay, as we move out of this year that everyone would like to forget, and move forward, this is kind of one of those things that we should probably expect to see a little bit more of his active and dynamic involvement.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean it's kind of like our center back pairing. Like he's been playing with new midfielders pretty much every game. Like Genie is always next to him, but he never knows who else is going to be in there with him, and that's just part and parcel of us not having any consistency because we have everyone injured all the time. Yeah, like right now, like
how can we have consistency?
We joked about us having an injury crisis earlier in the season, but we just now hit like the peak. We're now at the most we've had this entire season, and that's flying completely under the radar just because everyone's so bored of it and because no one wants to acknowledge that it's an actual problem.
Yeah,
well, I guess it's 9.
Used to it. We're used to it.
Yeah, I guess it's 9 players because Ben Davies is not a real person. So we're missing 9 people.
Birds aren't real, and Ben Davies doesn't exist. Those are two facts. I say 2 absolute facts. With this being the highest injury total that we've been able to accumulate, what a incredible accomplishment. The highest injury total that we've been able to accumulate so far in the season, and to be able to eke out a victory out of that. Do you think that's significant at all, to be able to get a victory finally in light of all of those injuries?
Absolutely. I mean, it's been something we've been struggling with more people fit. So to do it when we have no business doing it, when we have Nat Phillips and Reese Williams starting at center back against an actual PL team. I think the last time they played together was that Villa game where they played like some like kids taking a tour of the stadium. I think that was who we ended up playing in that game.
I think so.
It's huge for our
It's a great mentality. Fan experience package that Villa allowed their fans to get. Yeah.
And it's great for the mentality of this team to get that belief back. But I mean, as we've seen every episode that we've recorded and said, can they build off of that? And they're going to have to build off of that because we have a big test tomorrow. Yep. I mean, that will be a much bigger test for Nat Phillips and Reese Williams than Southampton were. So at least we have some confidence going into that match. But this season has shown us that you can't get your hopes up until the season's over and the next season begins.
Yeah, exactly. You just can't. And I mean, and I think that's part of it as well. I mean, you talk about the mentality of the team being able to get back, a little bit of confidence, trying to get back into being the mentality monsters that we have prided ourselves on being. I think a major part of that as well is that it just, we're able to finally kind of see the light at the end of the tunnel on this season and say, okay, we just have a little bit longer to go before we can get an actual off-season, before we can get an actual full off-season training in, before we can get, rest time and rehab time for realsies for Van Dijk and Hendo. I know there's been a lot of talk about them, probably not being in the Van Dijk not being in the Euros, I believe is correct. Mm-hmm. Henderson is a possibility for the Euros. I think that was what the headline said. But, being able to get them some time to actually, get the whole team some time to be able to recover from all the knocks that they've picked up that are not, not the members of the team that are missing significant time. They just have the wear and tear of a weird season with no preseason, with like all of this mess going on. Like it's going to be good. I think we see the end of the tunnel. I think that helps the mentality a little bit as well. The only question now is, do we have it in us, and maybe have a little bit of luck as well of being able to, sneak back in the window. Currently in 6th, only a point shy of West Ham with a game in hand. Let's see, 5 shy of Chelsea, who are at 36 matches played already. 7 shy of Leicester, who are at 36 matches already. So a few more matches of a potential of getting if we won out, getting 12 points out of all of that, which could be enough, to help us get in where we need to get in. But the question remains, okay, do we have it in us to be able to push forward? You mentioned we haven't been able to string together much consistency lately. What are your feelings on that situation now, Alex? Do you feel any better, any more confident about it? Or is this kind of still the same old until proven otherwise?
I'm confident enough in us to score at least one goal in all of those games that we have left, even including the match against United. We've shown that we can overcome the odds and fight against whatever evil forces have attached themselves to our club this season and prevented us.
Some real bad juju going on around here, man.
I've got some friends that maintain that there's like a dead cat buried at Anfield and is cursing the team. So if we could dig that up, that would be fantastic. But we can get at least one. Sadio and Mo are not themselves right now, but what they can do is find the net once and just somehow make it work. Jota's keep getting close. I mean, Thiago probably should have scored beforehand. He's had so many chances to score. I mean, that Trent winner against Villa, it can be overlooked that the shot that led to that was a ridiculous Thiago volley from a Shaqiri cross. So, I mean, the goals can come. It's just, can our hyper-aggressive defensive shape that consists of our new senior center back that hadn't played before this season for our team and his younger brother, can they continue to keep the other team out? I don't know. It's just so tough because if United have proven anything this season is that they'll find a way to score goals. As much as I hate to admit it, I mean, they've just been doing that, and Cavani's been brilliant of late, and he's intelligent and experienced enough. And I don't really use that word because it's a weird thing, but he is experienced enough to know how to deal with a situation like this. So it's kind of a not great matchup, especially when you look at the fact that they got to rest their entire team on Monday. And Klopp is absolutely right. They had to do that. The fact that they're having to play these matches in quick succession is absolutely insane. And everyone wants to ignore the concerns that Klopp and some of the other managers brought up earlier in the season, but we're definitely seeing it now, and it's terrible.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, it's dumb. It was his exact word that it's a crime, I think is what is how he described it. It is. It really is. And here's the question I have as we kind of trickle out of the Southampton talk a little bit and shift a little bit more towards this preview a bit of this United match that by the time probably you listener are checking out this podcast, it's match day. It's ready. We're ready to go. The question that kind of remains is, okay, in light of this criminal schedule they've got right now, in light of the fact that City has locked up the title, the Premier League title itself, and the fact that, it seems like United probably has other priorities going on, even with this being a rivalry match and with fan unrest in general, and, a victory over a rival always helps out in that regard. You do have to wonder a little bit of what does United have to play for right now other than to try to ruin our top four chances, which obviously is a great motivator. We would, if we were in that position, we would be rooting for that hardcore. But you do have to wonder just a little bit about okay, for the players, for the team right now, what are they actually focusing on? And is this going to be a thing that, because there's more riding on it in Liverpool's favor, we kind of take advantage or come out a little bit more motivated, come out a little hotter? Do you think any of that might play into any of this coming up match?
I could absolutely see it being on some of their players' minds. We've got tight games, tight turnaround between games, but we've got a European final to worry about.
Yeah.
So could absolutely see that creeping in. But that said, this will be a fiery game. It will hopefully not be the worst game ever, like the last game was between us.
I
in the
mean, you know
league.
it will be. You already know it will be. Like, there's no chance that this is actually an entertaining game.
Oh, it's going to be terrible, and that might be the only saving grace of it, that it is terrible. Because if it's entertaining, what likely will happen is that they're picking us off on the counter. Um, but it will probably be awful, and we'll just see if the referee allows for the actual amount of stoppage time this time, especially if we're on a breakaway. I think a lot of people have forgotten that there were quite a few seconds left when Sadio Mane was clean through on goal last time.
Oh, man, I had forgotten that. Oh, man, I had forgotten that. Whoa, man. Yikes. Yeah, it makes me wonder a little bit if they, how much of a priority this is, just kind of in the grand scheme of things, for them. I'm trying to remember exactly what their match congestion looks like. I'll pull up their schedule real quick.
So they've got us, then Fulham on Tuesday.
Yep.
Then Wolves, then Villarreal.
Yeah. So it's the 13th. 5 days till the Fulham match. 5 days till the Wolves match. 3 days to the Villarreal match. Oh man, that's terrible. If it was any other club, I'd feel more sympathy. But that's just bad.
Yeah.
So yeah, you do have to wonder a little bit if they're like, okay, how important is this? Especially considering it's like, if they do need to earn a few extra points just for any reason, in particular, hold off Leicester from getting that second place money. That might be the biggest motivation. They know that they have much easier chances of doing that against Fulham and against Wolves than they would against us. So, yeah, it'll be interesting. So what about our players' motivation? Obviously, there's a lot that goes into this, and it's not just the rivalry now, which will be interesting considering, no fans around. Weren't supposed to be fans a couple of weeks ago either, but we saw how that turned out.
Yeah.
But it'll be interesting, of course, no fans at Old Trafford, so it can only go so far. But our team obviously has a lot of motivation behind it. Do you think that emotions will end up playing into this as much as it typically would?
Not as much as it typically would, but it will definitely be there because, we saw today Chelsea drop points. The hope is still there. Like, that's the thing. Mm-hmm. It's not dead enough to where we can just say we're not getting Champions League. Like, we could still theoretically get it. The other teams that we're competing with can drop points. They can play badly. They can do stupid stuff. So, it's up to us. And even just going into next season, it would be fantastic to just win out and ride a little bit of a high into the next season. And go into the offseason thinking, okay, we're a little bit closer to being back. Let's buckle down. Let's get together and let's figure this out, riding the momentum that we had at the end of the season. But the only thing I'm concerned with, and I know it's a bit rich coming from us considering their fixture list, but our players, are they going to be tired? Because we know who we're going to play. We only have a select few amount of players we can use. And we have an even fewer amount that we actually trust to start games and play over 80 minutes of games. So that will be the thing, is the players balancing their kind of physical and mental fatigue at this home stretch in a configured game. A game where there's supposed to be even more protests. It'll probably be a hostile environment, not necessarily just for us, but for everyone around the stadium coming in. There's going to be a lot to deal with. But luckily, they've already had a game in the midst of just a crazy poop storm this season against Leeds. So we should be fine. We're used to just having insane things happen to us.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, I think, okay, so you mentioned the momentum going out of the season and into the next one. I think that's huge also because we've seen, quite honestly, how it works the other direction. And even though, we won our first, title in forever last year, we did not end last season well. We were not playing well. We were not, we went from very quickly, a lot of people pointed out, from being, the best team that anyone has ever seen play, to being a real slog of a team most of the time towards the end of last season. So yeah, I mean, like we saw how momentum went coming out of what we were a great year and going into what has been an absolutely miserable year. We've seen that momentum. We've seen how that affects. So it'd be nice to have the opposite thing happen and the reverse this time around and actually be able to ride some momentum back into what should be a better season with, we would hope, a healthy lineup. Maybe a signing or two. Probably not now that we kind of have more insight on the financial situation of the club, but still. So yeah, it would be very nice. But this cough is killing me. But out of all of that, I mean, if we don't perform well, if we lose this match, if we don't get the points that we need, do you still feel like there's enough in the tank against West Brom, Burnley, and Palace? Obviously, at that point, a lot more relies on the teams ahead of us, Chelsea, West Ham, dropping points. But do you still think there's enough in the tank? What do you think we can? I've already asked you a little bit about like top four, but what do you think we could actually salvage as we get into the last bit of this season? What can we actually salvage from this entire year as we're about to like look back on it, which is, I think we can all agree we don't want to ever look back on this one. But I mean, is there anything you think we can really pull from it?
Honestly, so two things. One, if we don't win this match, that will be the nail in the coffin for our top four hopes. Winning this match is the only way to put enough pressure on the people above us to continue to slip up enough to where we can take advantage of it. I mean, they could slip up, but if we don't win this match, then we can't take advantage of it because we're too far behind. The other thing we could take out of this is the fact that we will have fans back in the stadium for the Palace match, and that will hopefully bring the team, the actual club part of the club, and the fans closer together after just all of the insanity that has happened this season. That will be the positive. But I mean, you don't really. The weird thing is you don't look at the remaining fixtures, especially because we have a Champions League, a European race to run. You don't look at it and think there's time for someone maybe on the fringes or someone new to like break into the team and finish on a high, because they're just not going to play. We're going to see all the subs for maybe a maximum of 10 minutes per game. So it's not like you can see someone like Naby Keita or Ox come in and like establish themselves and give Klopp something to think about for next season. No, what really will happen is maybe one of our people that are exhausted will play themselves into form. And knowing our luck this season, it will be Genie as he departs. He will become the Netherlands Genie and just destroy and ride this momentum into the Euros and then never return. So like that would sum up this season quite nicely. So that's about as much as we can hope for, is someone getting healthy again, being able to play again, and just getting back into the form that we know they're capable of.
I kind of halfway expect Genie to go be Netherlands Genie and then actually never end up on a club. Like, just go and be like, all right, that went well enough that I am going to, for the rest of my life, just be an international player.
Yeah.
Thanks. I'll see you guys. Like, I don't know why that would work or why that would happen, but I kind of want it and halfway expect it to happen for some reason.
Yeah, that was my hope for Gigi Buffon after he announced that he was leaving Juve again, was that he just makes the Italian national team his club team.
And that's it. If only we could be that lucky.
Yeah, and also, I mean, even if wherever he does end up, Klopp's still going to be picking Genie next season for the starting 11. And we'll just play a man down most games because we'll just be like, well, where is he? He's supposed to be here. We'll just start without him.
If he, even if he's not playing this team, are on this team, he's just still going to be required to fly in and
Yeah.
play for this team, even if he's not on like the payroll anymore. He's going to pull double duty. It's going to be a nightmare for him, but if anyone can do it, it's going to have to be him, I guess. Going to have to be. All right, so again, kind of tail end of the season, looking back a little bit, not really this isn't our like end of the year episode by any means, but looking back a little bit, do you think who do you think of this season performance wise? Not because of like injury, not because of, being new and needing to learn, not because of being a 12-year-old like Reese Williams, forced in action, all that. Who do you think of this team has the most to prove based off of their performance this season and going into the next year? Is there anyone that stands out in your mind as like, okay, going into next year, you need to do a little bit better, or you need to come back to who you were? Is there anyone at all that comes to your mind? I know that's kind of like a spur of the moment. Like we didn't really plan or discuss much about what we were going to cover in this episode. So it's kind of I didn't give you any time to actually prepare for this question, but here's the question. Do something with it, Alex. Go.
Well, it's an interesting question because, and this is not just me stalling, the people that need to step up the most, one, don't really have anything to prove. Like this has already been proven to be a blip in their career rather than being the normal. It wasn't really like the trajectory led them to this. It's just we're all like, what happened? Like if you think of someone like Mo and you think of someone like Sadio, it's not like, oh, their form had been dropping off a little bit and we kind of expected them to have a dip. It was just like, when did they get space jammed? Why do they absolutely suck now? So I wouldn't necessarily say they have something to prove, but they need to get back into it. Honestly, the person who probably has the most to prove, probably if all goes to plan as it needs to go, will not be a starter next season. And that's Bobby Firmino. Like he's just been almost non-existent this entire season. And he's done so much for this team, and you don't want to like take him out of the team, but we need to evolve. We clearly have a need to get someone who can score goals, who can play maybe a bit of that hybrid, like what Bobby does and what a traditional striker does, with some of the players that we've played, with some of the midfield combinations we have, with how we even approach the midfield, with certain players absent. We just kind of end up getting in each other's way. We have way too many people deep and no one in the box. And kind of given his age, given the workload that he's had to have, like I just don't know if Bobby will be the guy, will be the number 9 next season, because that seems to be it should be a priority target for us in the summer if we have any money to spend, because it's just, we always talk about how the team looks to evolve from season to season, but this is obviously the next step. We have to figure out how to score goals. We can't be so predictable in the way that we play. We can't be so kind of the condensed version of what made us so good. So either him and, I mean, maybe someone like Trent, who has had kind of an off year. There's been so many discussions about whether he should go to the Euros. He had a rough start to it. He had a calf problem. He had COVID. It was kind of rushed back because he had to be. He's still super young, but this is just one of those seasons where it's like, it obviously did not go according to plan. If he can step up and be the player that we know he can be next season, then everyone will forget what his form was this year. So I guess those two would be the primary ones that maybe need to step up. But one of them, I don't know if he will necessarily be an integral part of the 11 or as integral a part of the 11. He can still definitely feature coming off the bench, be a game changer, can play in some games where we need maybe that different type of approach to striker. But I just don't, we might have seen the end of his era through just the physical limits and the limits of like players that aren't Messi and Ronaldo having good patches of good form.
Yeah, it's a little bit heartbreaking because of how integral he was to the success of this team since he arrived. But I mean, you still see moments in which like he can keep contributing. So like, it just has to be in some sort of modified way, and you have to wonder if maybe that means a little bit of a different formation, so he's a little bit more of a true midfielder again, like he kind of started his career before he came here. It's funny to be talking about Bobby and Trent and not make a joke about Trent being wasted by not being in midfield. But you'd have to wonder if maybe Bobby needs to be, more of an actual midfielder again, instead of really being like the forward. And maybe, but I think you're right. It's kind of like it's time to actually get a striker who is a goal scoring striker. Again, I think it's obvious that we need to be able to actually score goals from that immediate position. So I'm curious what we do there. Obviously a lot more hope with Trent that it's a blip. I'll also say that it has been a subpar. I'll also say it's been a subpar season for Alisson. Obviously there's a lot that has gone on between some injuries, getting sick, obviously family, tragedy, all that sort of thing. But there's been a lot of moments in which he's not been as confident, and he's been obviously not as like mentally prepared at times, or having more mental lapses on the pitch, and his overall ability obviously covers up for most of that when stuff happens. But I do feel like it has to be he has to be able to go into next season just playing smarter, a wiser, more experienced, older, more veteran player. He has to do a little bit better job there. Obviously, not as much of has something to prove, or has to prove that this was a blip type of thing with him, because we know the talent is there and he shows just how good he is, on a weekly basis. But it seems like this year in particular, he's had a lot more moments of like, dude, what are you doing? than he's ever had before. And maybe he's always been this way and we're just now seeing it. But I think that this has been a season in which he's been not having the security blanket of his normal, center backs in front of him is really showing in like the mistakes that he makes, and how much more how different a player or his play style has become with those players not in front of him, with Virgil not in front of him, with Gomez and Matip not consistently in front of him. So I think he's a player I would also kind of add to that list.
Yeah, I cut him some slack because of all the stuff that has been going on in his personal life. But I mean, you're right. He has been making uncharacteristic errors, like all of the gambles that he would take last season and worked, and what made him such a great keeper just haven't paid off. Right. And I mean, there was plenty of times where it's just a classic miscommunication of new players playing in front of him, not understanding how he likes to play, and then that leading to goals. So I would definitely agree. It would definitely help to keep those goals out because we play such a high risk style.
Yeah.
And then going back to the striker situation, like it's the good thing about the modern game is that there are a bunch of 15 to 20 to 25 goal a season strikers out there that put in the hard yards and are have incredible work rates and would fit in. So it's not like we have to sacrifice between playing Bobby and playing someone like Andy Carroll anymore. Like right. The game has evolved to where we can find someone who would fit the style and be able to score as well. We just have to get used to playing with someone like that. So like these problems can be fixed, and we can create a new look and have a new team and make everybody work that we want to work. But it's not like there's only one Bobby Firmino for sure, but we can have some great cover bands playing up top.
What an incredible metaphor that was. That was very good. No, you're absolutely right. Like there's only one of him and there only ever will be one of him, but it's a little bit different than like it used to be. You've got more and more players that are capable of doing a lot more, just because the game has become over the years so much more technically skilled, technically proficient of a general overall game, that more and more, kids as they grow up are doing a whole lot more. You're seeing it in like all areas of sports. It's fascinating to see, like the 7 foot tall basketball player who grew up, dribbling and passing all the time. So now he's 7 feet tall and can pass better than anyone else. It was never that way until like recently, like total basketball has really become, I think, but you're seeing it in so many sports where, the best athletes on the field are not limited to like certain positions. They're encouraged to do all kinds of different things, and play all sorts of different ways. You see it in this sport as well. It's no exception. There's a lot, so you get a lot more players that are able to do a lot more and are a lot more confident doing a lot more roles in that regard as strikers. So, that being said, if we don't get Haaland or Mbappe, I'm gonna be pissed. That's just the bottom line.
Yeah, we riot if we don't get both of them actually, and Sancho. Yeah. So, and it's gonna be interesting. I mean, because there's a lot of young talent that can even learn from their contemporaries, and I think one player that really stands out is like, wow, he's really gonna impact how strikers play for a very long time is Robert Lewandowski. I mean, he's one. I mean, everyone on Bayern got absolutely ripped over the lockdown. They're like full credit to their fitness team for like mailing every player on their team a giant gym and giving them just this beast mode workout for them to all become.
It actually
like
was all
behemoths.
just Pelotons. They sent them a bunch of Pelotons and like Peloton classes, and they were like, "All right, guys, knock them out."
And it worked, and look at him now. But like, you look at how he plays, and he's not like, he's exactly what we were just talking about with those. I mean, he scores way more than 15 to 20 goals a season, right. But he's more than just a guy who just sits in the box and does tap-ins. Like, he's so involved in the play and integral to the build-up as well as finishing it off that, like, you look at how many young strikers that are emerging that are probably seeing him and being like, I want to do that too. And so we'll see how he impacts them and like the people coming through.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be really interesting. As we are on the tail end of the Messi and Ronaldo era of like superstars, like in our lifetimes, we've really been able to really watch, and like their actual like primes and all that. Really been able to watch like Ronaldinho and Thierry Henry, and to now be able to also have said like we got to watch the careers of Messi and Ronaldo. You see the impact of all these players, but I think it's fascinating coming out of the impact of those two guys in particular, their impact on how players develop, how kids grow up playing the sport. It's going to be fascinating to see that impact for years to come as this next generation that aren't just, becoming pros right now, but this generation that are currently in their teens and all they've ever known are these guys. And they're, the guys they're immediately influencing. It's going to be fascinating to see what happens in the near future of like what sort of players and talents actually like develop and arrive in the next, decade or so. It's going to be really interesting.
Yeah. And so many kids are looking up to Stuart Downing, Liverpool era. Like it's just a lot of just terrible crosses, a lot of just shanked shots. It's gonna really affect. And I'm hoping Harvey Elliott picked that up while he was playing with Stuart Downing at Blackburn. Yeah, that here's what you need to do, kid. Hit the shot, have it go just backwards. You're ready. Okay.
He a lot of you mentioned already the great Andy Carroll, like most expensive English player, at the time. I think that's who a lot of kids are going to strive to emulate as well. You just can't say enough about him.
I mean, he was the captain of the Pirate 11, so I think everyone wants to be the captain of the Pirate 11.
When I say you can't say enough about him, I mean we've already said too much about him. That's actually what I meant. My bad. I misspoke. Misspoke for sure. But yeah, this is it'll be interesting to see. And it'll be interesting to see that the next generation, as you mentioned Harvey Elliott, but like the next generation of Liverpool as well, as we get closer to the tail ends of the primes of a lot of our main players, but also kind of the tail ends of their careers in general, of like say a Mo and a Sadio and you know, I think James Milner is going to end up playing longer than either Mo or Sadio do. I just think that's going to happen. But
He's about to hit his prime. I don't know why. Yeah.
Milner hadn't even peaked yet, y'all. He hadn't even peaked. So anyway, let's talk specifically about the United match and what we can expect. We talked about some of the big picture stuff. Let's get into the details, though. What we can expect, what we need to do in order to defeat them and have any chance of salvaging a top 4 finish out of this disastrous season that we are all so ready to see gone. But what type of team are they, and what does it take to beat them, Alex?
I mean, when they're at their best, they're counterattacking, they're sitting deep, being frustrating, and then hitting on the break really quickly. And that's where they thrive. So that's probably what they're going to look to do, even at home against us, because they know that if they can lure us forward, we can be relatively easy pickings on the counter. So that's what I'm fully expecting. It's going to be annoying. They're probably going to get away with a lot. These matches are always physical, and they just suck. And we've talked about it before. It's just not going to be fun. I am not feeling too optimistic about this one, but I don't ever want to predict us losing to them. So I will just say a 1-1 draw where we score first and then have quite a few chances and don't capitalize, and then they score in the last 10 minutes. I don't think we've had a match like that this season before, so I think this would be a nice change of pace for us to do something like that. And then I'll just go ahead and throw in a prediction for Western Bromworth, whatever their Pez name. West Brom, they're relegated. Sam Allardyce is going to be on pints of wine. He's going to be lit. It's going to be dumb. I hate playing them so much.
It sucks.
So, and in that match, I feel like we're going to go up 1-0 kind of early, and then we'll just get like a bunch of chances because they're not very good. We're not going to finish, and then they'll score in the last 10 minutes, and we'll draw 1-1.
Yeah. Why would we ever actually finish any chances?
Yeah.
I don't understand. Like the 2 goals we got against Southampton, it almost felt like we didn't really want them that badly. They just kind of happened, and we had to live with them. I mean, you're right. It sucks to even like say, oh yeah, probably not going to be a good result against United. Hate having to try to predict anything about the biggest rivalry, but at the same time, like we have not been able to string together very much of a good run of form at any point this entire year. So why start now, right? Like why in the world should this be any different? So yeah, I think it's going to be a not what we want out of a match. I could really see it being even going so far as like a goalless draw, like just depending on how not motivated they are, because I do think there is. I know we talked a lot about it, but I do think they will have motivation, because this is Liverpool versus United. There has to be some motivation, and it would kind of save face, I think, with an aggravated fan base on their regard to get something out of it. But I just also wonder if they're just going to try to conserve the energy the best they can, and really like not even necessarily like push the counter attack that often, but only really try to pick out the best counterattack opportunities, and therefore like really slow things down in that regard. So I could see that going in such a way that it ends up just kind of being, well, simply put, a really terrible game to try to watch.
Yeah.
So I could easily see it being a draw that might not even have any goals, or a 1-1 or something like that. I just think it's going to be a little too just kind of bland a performance from either team for anyone to actually walk away with a victory. So that being said, now that I've said that, I'm sure it'll be like we beat them by 7, and it makes no sense because of course it would be. Why wouldn't it would be? Why wouldn't it would be? Is that what I just said?
That's the name of the episode right there.
Why wouldn't it would be? And why wouldn't you would have been tuned in here to You'll Never Talk Alone? Hey, thanks for joining us. My voice, as you can tell, is giving out on me, so I think we're going to wrap this episode up before I, completely lose it on the air. But we thank you for putting up with us over the past couple of weeks, being patient with us as we, work through sickness and busyness and all of the above. To be able to get here and get to this episode once again. So, Alex, thank you, sir, for always being there to carry me when I am struggling to make it through a podcast episode.
I mean, why wouldn't I would be?
Why wouldn't you would be? Oh, you absolute legend. We thank you for tuning into this episode of You'll Never Talk Alone. That's Alex Lovell. I'm your friend Joseph Craven, and it is with great honor that I send it over to Andrew Ainsworth to sign us out for one of the last times this season. It won't be very much longer until this season is done, and we won't have these Andrew sign-offs for this season.
Yeah,
for this season. So, Andrew, take it away, sir. Thanks for tuning in.